Hello and welcome to another edition of Sutton Impact Family Style. I'm Jason, and we have a special guest today. Sorry. Oops. Filling in for my dad today is Chase. So, explain to the audience who you are as a Sutton family member.
Yes, hi, it's Chase. I'm a former student of Bill Sutton, who was happy to be filling in for just this 1 week. This is not part of the transition. Bill will be back next week, but since Jason and I are both down here in New Orleans, I got called in from the bullpen to fill in for the week.
Yes, indeed. We're excited to have you. And we still are going to start with our first segment, Sports Business segment. We have a new one. Let's go right ahead.
Yeah, well, Sports Business segment for this week is the New Orleans Pelicans announced that their official chicken for this season is going to be crispy, crunchy chicken. If you're not familiar with crispy, crunchy chicken, it's gas station chicken.
Gas station chicken.
Which is actually pretty spectacular. Have you had crispy, crunchy before, Jason?
I have not. I've always been weary because it is a gas station chicken. So.
I don't remember why I had it the first time I had it, but once I had it once...
You were sold.
Yeah, I was sold. It's really good. Now, maybe it's really good because expectations are awfully low, but I thought it was great. And then, they announced the deal with the Pelicans, and I thought, that's kind of a genius move that so many teams are looking to bring in branded food into the arena, since consumers want branded food, it's better, it generally sells better, sort of know what they're getting. But usually those deals are hard to get done because between the franchisee, the concessionaire, the arena management, and the team, there's just too many sort of fingers in the pie to actually make money, compounded by the fact that most arenas, other than the Staples Center, are only open 4 or 5 hours for maybe 100 nights.
Right.
Or at least that's sort of what the situation in New Orleans is. So it's not a traditional QSR. It's not open often enough for it to actually make any money. And it's awfully difficult to staff if you're a restaurateur that is really careful about the food that you're serving in one location being exactly like the food you're serving in another location. This is gas station chicken. It's not, you don't have that same concern. So it seems like it could be a way for a deal like that to sort of thread the needle of actually checking the box for all the different constituencies involved, what they're all trying to go for. We'll see how it works out.
And I think if you're crispy, crunchy chicken. Also, I would say, as someone that has not tried gas station chicken because I've been wary about eating gas station chicken, when I see that it's now branded with an NBA franchise, and obviously now having heard testimonial from you about how delicious this chicken is, I do want to try it. But it also, I feel like it adds an air of legitimacy to crispy, crunchy. Now it's not just gas station chicken, it's NBA gas station chicken, which is maybe slightly more appealing.
And I've heard that Crispy Crunchy is in something like 30 different states. So I haven't sort of cross-referenced to see which states and which teams and which leagues. But it could be something that see a lot of publicity a lot of different places.
Yeah, I don't know how far north it goes, but I know it's Florida all the way across through Texas. I think the southern states all carry crispy, crunchy chicken. Which I guess makes sense because we're the southern states and we have everything fried, so why wouldn't we want fried chicken at the gas station when we're filling up?
Yeah, I'd probably steer clear from your gas station sushi, but
The chicken, yeah. It's deep fried. Can't hurt it, right? Yeah. Well, we are going to talk something that we never talk when my dad is on here, because my dad and I pay zero attention to this worldwide, global, incredible sport that's even growing here. I think for the first time in my lifetime, I would say soccer is really growing in America. Like, I've heard it my entire life that it's getting bigger and bigger, but I've never actually seen any evidence up until the last few years with obviously what they've been doing, with the MLS over here, which has been pretty impressive. I mean, I lived in, we saw the Orlando Lions team, which was a really cool event to go to. I'll give them the credit for that. But we do have an interesting Cleveland situation, correct?
We do. It's pretty ironic that it would be happening in Cleveland, considering all the relocation of the Browns and the lawsuits and those first laws about keeping the intellectual property in the state. Well, the guy that owns the Columbus Crew, or it's now SC Columbus,
yes,
has been trying to move his team to Austin. And Columbus they were one of the first soccer-specific stadiums in the United States. U.S. national team has had some historic games there. It's been a market that has, at least the fan base, has supported the team, but exactly why he wants to leave, I don't know all the details behind that, but he's trying to go to Austin, and at the last minute, the owners of the Browns apparently have swooped in. They are going to apparently buy his team, and now he will get an expansion team in Austin. So the coaches and players all stay in Columbus. Meanwhile, the front office moves down to Austin, and this has some other ramifications rippling out through the league, because there's 8 to 10 other cities all trying to get expansion, the next round of expansion cities, and this would take one of those off the table. So it's interesting bit of musical chairs, and wondering how all these finances are going to play out when this owner spent $60-70 million to get the franchise when he bought it, and now expansion fees are like $150-200 million. So
that's crazy.
Yeah, for the longest time, soccer was it's up and coming. It's the next big thing. For 50 years, it was the next big thing, and we'll see. Maybe it is finally here. I know when your dad attended his first soccer game, he warned all of his former students that if you hear about unusual lightning strikes, he was on his way to a soccer game.
Well, the one thing I will say about soccer is I think Bill Simmons has made this point a number of times, but from a time perspective, soccer is probably the shortest of all American professional sports. It's definitely shorter than baseball and definitely shorter than football. So it's a smaller time commitment. Like, you go in, you're going to get, your 45-minute half?
45-minute halves, yeah. With
probably 2 or 3 minutes of extra time. So, I mean, it's a pretty concise, 2-hour time frame. You can watch an entire match. You can get in, get out, as opposed to maybe the 4 hours of an NFL game or the 6 to 7 hours of a Major League Baseball game. I haven't watched baseball in a while. I'm not sure how long they go, but it seems like they last an eternity whenever I try to watch baseball. But, I mean, you have that going, and then the cheering and the songs at soccer is just really cool. Like, it seems like, I've gone to I went to one international soccer match, and they were singing, like, everybody in the stands knew, each team knew the national chants of the other team, and they were just singing and chanting the entire time. It was pretty cool. It's very, the
in-game experience at Major League Soccer games is something you don't get anywhere else in the United States. For the markets like Orlando, like Kansas City, the chanting and the singing, the flags, it is a very different fan culture really taken root, and all the different places that have sort of their own soccer-specific stadiums, that environment is spreading throughout the leagues, and apparently a lot of the other leagues have sat up and taken notice. I've heard the guys at the Kansas City MLS team are taking people in on an almost weekly basis. Other teams around the league wanting to see what they're doing to help sort of foster this supporter culture grow. Certainly, it's with so many amazing things happening on the television side, right, and on the second screen and third screen side. You need to keep that in-arena, in-stadium experience something that people are going to come back to. So.
Right, and if you're there cheering and singing the entire time, and you have, people are waving the flags, you've got the fight songs, like, it becomes an experience you can't have at home. Whereas, I watched the Red Zone. I mean, the Steelers were off today, so I basically just watched the Red Zone channel all day long. So anytime anything exciting was happening, I was rushed off to another game, and it was just, I don't get that at an NFL stadium. And when I've gone to NFL games, it's a much more... There's moments of cheering, obviously, but it's a lot of just sitting and watching, and typically an NFL stadium is also sitting and watching a Jumbotron, so sometimes you got to wonder, why am I coming to the NFL to watch a game on a giant TV when I also have a giant TV in my living room that's even nicer on some level? So it seems like that's one thing soccer has that really, besides the Wi-Fi and the better food and the crispy, crunchy gas station chicken, it's the one thing they seem to have that really sets it apart. It's an in-game experience, which is, and I don't think you can really recreate that in other sports at this point with all the years of...
Yeah, I don't know how you could foster some of that to grow in the other sports that just don't feel like it's that conducive. It doesn't sort of feel real authentic to the culture of the sport.
No,
but by the same token, if the TV money is what's driving the bus, it's sort of an interesting dichotomy of you have to have that great broadcast experience for all the folks sitting on their comfortable couch, looking at their big, beautiful TV with their food, their bathrooms, not worried about parking.
Parking is huge. The parking and driving to and from the stadium, that's always been a big thing for me.
Yeah, parking. Yeah, getting the parking pass. If your friends can give you tickets, great. Your really good friends get you the parking pass.
Exactly. So without the parking pass, it's just a no-go for me. I'm just going to pass.
Yeah, get to see why so many of these, all the new stadiums, new arenas, everything needs to be in the center of the city so it's walkable.
Exactly. It makes a ton of sense. But speaking of the NFL, starting this morning at the gym, I watched part of the Chargers and Titans in London. And it seems like the NFL is finally starting to normalize at this point. We're 7 weeks in, and I feel like we know who the contenders are. And sadly, I think, New England is still obviously the number one contender, and they just, like Michael Myers movie came out, and Tom Brady, like Michael Myers, just won't die or get old or go away, which is very frustrating to a non-Patriot fan, but it looks like it's...
just felt for the Bears fans today. You catch a Hail Mary that doesn't quite get in. Seems like that things like that just happen for the Patriots.
And they have for the last, 15 years. It's just... Since Brady got there, it just seems like they have that, proverbial rabbit's foot, lucky gold spur, whatever it is. But the Rams are still completely undefeated, and they look dominant again today in a game that they didn't even seem like they were trying that hard. And their defense still hasn't even gotten going yet, which is supposed to be one of their strengths. And as we talked earlier, slightly under the radar, who played in London today, so, and they beat the Titans on a weird play at the end. You didn't watch that game, I don't think, but the Titans scored with I think, 6 seconds left to pull within one. And then rather kicking the extra point and going to overtime, they tried to go for two. And they failed, and the Chargers held on to win. So we have a chance this year for an all Los Angeles Super Bowl, which would be pretty insane.
That would be completely ridiculous. Though I'm curious as to how well the Chargers can go as the season progresses, playing their home games in front of a small crowd in a small stadium. Going into this season, I was really looking forward to see how NFL would translate into the LA Galaxy's small stadium. I think it seats 20,000. I thought it would be great to see an NFL crowd trying to get in there, and that's not what's happened.
No. But the Chargers have never really, I mean, I lived in San Diego for a year, and I still have not met that many Chargers fans in my entire life. San Diego seemed like a culture that sort of, didn't really care that much about having a professional sports team. And it was also a lot of, I mean, it's a very transplant city as well, where you get a lot of people that move there because they can afford to live there and it's beautiful weather, so they bring their fandom with them. So, I mean, in that stadium, even in LA, I think, you're only, even if everybody showed up, even if they sold it out, you're going to have half the fans are probably there for the other team, depending on who they're playing.
And that could be happening with the Rams, too.
Yeah. I think LA's sort of embraced, I mean, I don't think they wanted two NFL teams. I mean, obviously the owners did and the network did, but I don't know if the city did, and I think they've just chosen the Rams.
The Rams got there first, so...
The Rams got there first, and they have Gurley and, Jared Goff, and they've got, the genius young head coach and this stifling defense and Aaron Donald. Like, they're, and their owner's been, just throwing money at this team constantly. Big money, big name signings, big money signings. It's been a very LA, arrival with the NFL, I think, which has helped them. And then as we spoke a little bit off the air, the Chargers, for as much talent as they've had for the last probably 6 years, they just every single year found a way not to just blow it in weird ways towards the end of a season and not make the playoffs consistently. This year they're 5-2, and they look like they're, as opposed to trying to come back from a slow start, they just need to maintain this start, and they should make the playoffs finally. But I think, they're just not, I don't know. I think the city of LA has decided that the Rams are their team, and that's who they're sticking with. Sort of like in New York, nobody's really a Nets fan. You're a Knicks fan. No matter how about the Knicks are, you're still a Knicks fan.
And you don't want to be that second franchise.
No, you don't want to be the Clippers.
It's just a tough position to be in when you're the second franchise, the secondary tenant. Any news about you is below the fold or on the second page. Sometimes it's good to fly under the radar, but it's not good to fly under the radar at the other team in town.
No. And they're clearly the other team in town. But our New Orleans Saints just won against the Ravens. And it looks like they're back on track to also being another potential Super Bowl contender, which is pretty exciting to see.
Yeah, the city is going crazy as it always does. When the team's doing well, it goes pretty crazy when the team's not doing well. But the offense sure is clicking. And
the defense seems like they started out really slow. It looked like they had this promising young defense last year, and then this beginning of this year they were in shootouts, and it looked like the defense just completely went away. But these last few weeks, it seems like they finally started to find the groove a little bit, as much as anybody can in the new NFL, where you can't really play defense. But I don't know. They look like they could be pretty good.
I feel like if not for really fluke play,
yeah,
I'd have taken the Saints over the Eagles, and certainly taken the Saints over the Pats in the Super Bowl.
an incredibly fluke play, historically bad, weird fluke play, but yeah. But as long as we're in New
you
Orleans,
wonder how long Drew Brees and
well, now they got Tyson Hill.
yeah, well, it's be curious to see what he can develop into. Hopefully,
I'm
have
still
plenty of time left with Breeze.
I think with the way he's playing and the way the rules are, like if he wants to, I mean, just like Brady, if he wants to go another couple of years, I don't see anything stopping him. Like it seems like he throws the ball just as well today as he did 5 years ago. So
they're certainly ready. You wonder how much they've got left, and it seems like we've had Brady and Breeze, and there was as much as this is the golden age of quarterbacks, it's been a while since some really good young ones have come into the league, but now all of a sudden, Mahomes, Wentz,
maybe Jared Goff.
We're sort of talking ourselves into Marcus Mariota. Not bad, but
yeah, I think he and Jameis.
Not
I
gonna have a
think
gold jacket one day.
Yeah. No, but
some
you've
of
also
these young
got
guys are coming up.
we got Baker Mayfield. It's pretty exciting in Cleveland. Sam Darnold's obviously taken a few lumps, throwing a lot of picks this year, but like he looks legitimate, and he's only 21 years old. So I think it's a good thing. We could find. I mean, Mahomes looks just so much fun if he can just not get hurt. Because he looks a little bit frail when he's running the football a little bit from time to time. But I mean, he's playing tonight. I'm excited to watch him again tonight because he's become like must-see football, I think.
Yeah, he is. Seems like the first young quarterback that is must-see TV
In a long
since. Oh God, now I'm blanking on the guy's name. The Redskins quarterback that
Robert Griffin, yeah.
Griffin,
RG3, yeah.
Once he got hurt, it was all over. He was just electric.
Yeah.
Initially.
And then I guess there was also the bizarreness of the Tim Tebow season. That you just, despite how poorly he would play for 3.5 quarters, whenever the fourth quarter came on in a Broncos game, I found myself tuning in just because you knew just something bizarre was going to happen. Yeah, I had no idea what it was, but like, a ball would get tipped and fly into the receiver's hands, or, just the kicker would make 60-yard field goals for the Broncos. It was just a really weird season, but it was must-see TV, but for a different sort of reason.
Yeah, won a playoff game. I've really never understood why the Jaguars just.
Well, especially when you look
at that time, he couldn't have done any worse than anything they had.
No, and he's certainly not. I mean, I went to grad school at UCF, so I was really hoping Blake Bortles would be good, but he seems to prove week in and week out that he's the weak link on that team over and over again. And they lost again today to another. Well, I guess we forgot about Deshaun Watson as a very young, exciting quarterback as well. But Bortles can't seem to move that football anymore. I don't know what it is. He just doesn't have whatever it is. He doesn't have it.
Yeah, the Jaguars have been one of my surprises for the year. I didn't think they would be quite as good as they were last year, but did not see them falling off this much.
No, my dad and I talked about it a little bit last week. I mean, obviously the rules are very tough against defense, but there were a couple years with the Steelers where they had an excellent defense, and their offense was just awful. Some of the Neil O'Donnell, Cordell Stewart years where they just... And it seemed like after a certain point, the defense would just come through, and they just eventually just get worn down, and I think you just lose hope. It's like, we could play the best defense ever, put our bodies on the line, and our offense can't score a point. So what's the point? And I feel like the Jags D that looked like just world beaters last year, and it started out the season really well. I think they're just slowly getting into that just beaten down, depressed phase of knowing, well, what good matters matter what we do because Blake Bortles is our quarterback. So I don't know if that's true or not, but I've seen that happen before. So
it seems like there used to be a time where if someone did something new and exciting on the offensive end, you could last for a little while before the defenses could figure it out and then stop it. Now that's reversed. The defense may be able to shut teams down for a little while, but look at enough film, and offense is going to be what wins out from here on out.
Well, you can't hit the quarterback high. You can't hit the quarterback low. You can't land on the quarterback. You can't hit him too hard now. So, I mean, I think you've seen time. Like, I saw a play today in a game where Dak Prescott was able to escape a sack, and it looked like the player could have just blown him up. Like, when you come off the edge and nobody sees you?
Yeah.
But instead of just blowing him up, it looked like he tried to, sort of hug him. And was going to, hug him to the ground, and Dak Prescott was able to spin out of that. And I feel like, a couple years ago, he would have just got blown up in the back. Just not knowing where he was. But I feel like the players are now a little bit wary about, so I think you get a little bit of that happening, too, where the defense is just still filling out the new rules and learning how to play under this new,
Yeah, well, it's a good thing the Saints won today, given the LSU call with their roughing the passer that is going to have their defensive back suspended for the first half of the Alabama game.
Yeah.
It seems like everybody was completely up in arms about that until 3 p.m. The Saints kicked off.
Pretty much, yeah. That pretty much ended it.
Yeah.
But one thing the people of New Orleans should be far more excited about than they seem to be is the Pelicans.
The Pelicans are the story of the NBA, both from the play of Anthony Davis and going into it was all the stories of will they miss Rondo, will they miss Boogie. Now, the Pelicans and Rondo are the top stories of the day.
But the Pelicans have more possessions per game than any team in the NBA. They're playing fast. They've got great shooters. You have a generational talent in Anthony Davis. Easily probably, you could probably argue that, he's definitely a top 5 player in the NBA at any given moment. Whether you put LeBron and KD above him, and then whatever you think of Giannis and Steph and those guys. But, Anthony Davis is clearly, somewhere in that.
No one is going to look at you funny if you say he's the best in the league.
No.
And he does something every night that you've never seen a human being do before. He is worth more than the price of admission.
Him alone.
And it really seems like all of the things that Rondo brought to the team last year that I felt like helped were all things in the locker room that they've learned, and maybe they don't need him, and they certainly don't need the distractions he brings, like the fight they got into the other night.
No. Although, as somebody that is never like Chris Paul, I did enjoy watching. I know you're not supposed to say these sorts of things, but I did enjoy watching Chris Paul get punched in the face.
Well, and certainly not a huge surprise that Rondo and Chris Paul going at it.
No, those are two very feisty people.
And as much as folks were saying, the drop off from Rondo to Elfrid Payton was going to be massive. Payton has shown flashes here and there. He always looked like somebody in the right situation could maybe turn into something, and
yeah,
he's fit in great. And if you get what he gives you, the 10, 10, and 10 on a night-to-night basis, without the ups and downs of playoff Rondo,
yeah,
add in Holiday and over 30 points from Mirotic.
And Julius Randle, the Laker cast-off. Looked like he's going to fit in very nicely.
An absolute steal. I'll be curious to see how they can manage to fit all these guys moving forward without Randall's bird rights, and how can you play Randall and Mirotic at the same time? But when you've got Anthony Davis, that solves a lot of problems.
It does. It goes without saying with every team in the NBA, but if they stay healthy, they look like a legitimate contender. The West is obviously stacked with Golden State, and obviously they just blew Houston out of the building, and whatever about Houston. But obviously, with Westbrook returning in Oklahoma City and Portland still being Portland and Utah being Utah is a very nice young team too, and then the very underrated Denver Nuggets. But I mean, you have one of the best players in the world. You're playing at an incredible pace. I like the coach. I like what they got. I mean, it's a team that if you're in the city of New Orleans, you should be watching them, and if you're not, you should be watching them on League Pass around the world because they're phenomenal to watch.
And Holiday is a great two-way player. Loads of fun to watch. And just a great guy, great family, great story. Two brothers in the league. His wife's a gold medalist. Just a great story. Nice to see all of their family's health problems behind him. And he's been healthy now basically the last couple of years.
Yeah.
But the knocks on him seem like people keep questioning his health. But it's been quite some time since it was actually his injury keeping him out. So it's an awful lot of good sports to watch here in New Orleans.
There are. And as we get near the end of the podcast for the day, since you are a New Orleans person, and I've done such a poor job of representing New Orleans as far as food goes, give us a breakfast, lunch, and dinner spot. Because I've done a bad job of... I go to the same 4 restaurants since I've been down here.
Well, I would say you go to the really good ones over and over again. Now,
I do go to the really good ones, certainly, but,
I was pretty excited to get introduced to cake. I don't know that I would have found it otherwise. And it is spectacular, and the dollar cupcakes are as good as advertised.
Oh, yeah.
But another great breakfast spot is Slim Goodies on Magazine, right around Magazine in Louisiana.
Okay. Slim Goodies. All right.
Slim Goodies. Great diner. It's sort of exactly the sort of greasy spoon, a couple of booths, long counter. Really do some great stuff, and have some unusual influences creep up. A Guatemalan breakfast, omelet with crawfish etouffee. There's some. If you aren't in the neighborhood by cake,
Slim Goodies.
That would be where I would get to.
All right.
When it comes to dinner, I'd love to be a little bit more adventurous, but I always steer people towards Giacomo's for dinner. For folks that are in from out of town, just because it has that unusual New Orleans vibe. You got to walk through the kitchen to get to some of the tables. Walk down to the Maple Leaf. There's always a wait for a table, so you walk down to the Maple Leaf, drink, listen to some good music there while you wait. And it's a great stretch of Oak Street that a lot of other things happening.
Yes, I live right off of Oak Street, so I know it quite well.
So it's since that is it's almost, it seems like that's almost sort of cliched among locals of a place that we steer folks to. I did just try not too long ago. It's called Braza. It's one of those sort of Argentinian steakhouse sort of places. It's out in Metairie. Just quality cut of meat.
Nice. I'm always looking for good steak.
Everything there was great. It had some really great sides. I always feel like with steakhouses, the steak has to be fantastic. So
yes,
what sets them apart are the sides.
And they bring it with the sides.
And for lunch, I've got a question for you because I'm at the age where my kids, pretty much their food groups are chicken fingers, burgers, and delivery pizza.
Yes, the staples.
Yeah, so not the most adventurous eaters, but much to my delight, they did just discover that they like pulled pork.
Oh.
Now they're not. They don't like anything too spicy.
Okay.
Don't like anything sort of too over the top flavorful. So someplace that would have kind of a good sort of solid generic pulled pork, but other stuff that would appeal to the wife and I, because you've been doing a very impressive cutting an impressive swath through the barbecue scene here. So
I have indeed. I've been doing barbecue pretty hardcore. I would probably say, Moe's is a very solid barbecue pork sandwich, and again, it's a toasted bun, pulled pork, really good pulled pork, and they put 2 pickles on it, but you can just pick those off. Their sauce is just a nice. They have a couple sauces, but they have a mild tomato sauce. It's one of those. Speaking of sides, it's sort of a you never know what you're gonna get. They have a couple of staples, like they have an okay mac and cheese, some baked beans, and then they have a chalkboard of daily sides that they make fresh. So on the right day, you can get excellent sides, depending on your taste. And on the other days, you might not get exactly the sides you really, that you've been just dying for. So it's a little bit dependent on some level, but still quite good. And then I think my favorite barbecue down here, and I don't know why I'm blanking on it right now, but I ordered them through Uber Eats yesterday. So I'm calling up my past orders of Uber Eats. Oh, Central City Barbecue, which is also a really cool place to go. Have you ever been to Central City?
I have not.
It's got on the outside. It's got a bunch of railroad cars, or not railroad cars. The things that railroad cars carry, like those big steel things, and it's almost built like a fortress. They have really good pulled pork. They just have plain French fries as a side, which kids always like. They've got excellent burnt ends. They also have candied pork-bellied pork ends. So they've got some other stuff that adults might get a little more excited about. They have a little more variety than Moe's does as well. So I would say one of those 2 spots are my 2 favorites.
I have to give those 2 a shot.
And Central City also has, if you go in the back room, they've got a giant window and you can look out at the giant smokers. You don't have to feel the heat from them, obviously, because you're in the air conditioning inside. But you can watch them, which is kind of nice. I think.
Yeah, definitely good places to go check out.
And they also have an excellent drink selection, too. They've got some pretty cool cocktails there. So, whereas Moe's is pretty much straight beer or sweet tea. So.
Yeah.
And again, Moe's, like I said, it's very hit or miss on the sides for me. They have a couple that I absolutely love, but you never know just daily, you never know what you're going to get. And they don't do a good job on their social media posting their sides for the day. I don't know why they don't do that, but that's my one knock on them. I just wish they would just be like, these are the sides we have today. And they also do a weird thing where they make really good brisket, but they only make brisket on Tuesdays, which I just find a little bit frustrating as someone that really enjoys their brisket.
You never understood why does McDonald's not always do the McRib if people love the McRib.
Right. They finally listen. They do breakfast 24 hours a day now.
Yeah, you got to give the people what they want. You got to play the hits, and
yeah, I think so. But we've gone almost 45 minutes, which is longer than our normal show. So thank you so much for being here and filling in.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening and all those good things. Please tell all your friends to come subscribe to us on iTunes, rate us on iTunes. We need more ratings. The more ratings we get, the higher up people notice us and all that good stuff. But we'll be back next week with the classic Jason and Bill, and then you never know moving forward.
Thank you all very much, and thank you, Bill and Jason, and looking forward to listening to the show next week.